Hey TikTok. So I saw this little trend on TikTok and somebody said try the pickles and the tahini sauce. So I went to the store and I got some pickles and I got some tahini sauce. So we're gonna try it because I really love this seasoning, but I want to try it on the pickles. I normally eat it on my watermelon, but I want to try both. So let's see if we got it. So I got this little mason jar. I'm gonna try to put them in this mason jar so I can like shake it out. So here are the pickles. Here's my mason jar. I should have poured some juice out. One little.
She tried to leave. She tried to protect her child. She thought the worst was behind her. But on a warm August night in Columbia, South Carolina, everything ended in silence. Inside her apartment, 29-year-old Jaylan Hasty was found shot to death. The only other person there? Her ex-boyfriend, the man she'd been trying to escape, was found wounded beside her. For months, Jaylan had made her fear known. She filed a restraining order. She asked the courts for help. She was a young mother trying to do what was right. Raise her child, build a better future, and cut ties with someone she no longer trusted. But sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes warning signs are ignored until it's too late. Neighbors heard a noise. A door slammed. Silence followed. And by the time authorities arrived, Jaylan was gone, lifeless, quiet, still. The man she feared was rushed to the hospital. He survived. And what happened inside that apartment that night has been the subject of grief, outrage, and questions that never seemed to stop. A protective order was in place. Her friends say she was scared. Her family says she knew something was coming. But no one knew it would end like this. What was he doing there? How did he get inside? Was it a planned visit? Or something else entirely? This wasn't the first time he showed up uninvited. It wasn't the first time Jaylan reached out for help. But on August 24th, 2023, help didn't come fast enough. This is the story of a mother whose pleas went unanswered. A case that highlights everything wrong with how we handle domestic violence in this country. And a child now left to grow up without her mother. The headlines came and went. The media moved on. But one family has never stopped asking the question. What really happened that night inside Jaylan's apartment? Was it preventable? Or was someone always going to make sure she never walked away? You're watching a case that deserves to be remembered. This is the story of Jaylan Hasty. If you believe stories like Jaylan's should never be forgotten, subscribe to this channel, share her name, and stay with us. Because what comes next might make you question everything. Before her name was in the headlines. Before the crime scene photos. Before the police tape wrapped around the quiet apartment on Long Creek Drive. Jaylan Hasty was simply living. She was 29 years old, a daughter, a sister, a young mother navigating the highs and lows of life in Columbia, South Carolina. She worked, cared for her baby girl, and dreamed of more. Those who knew her described a kind soul. She wasn't the loudest in the room, but when she spoke, people listened. Her laugh lingered. Her smile stayed with you. She was gentle, soft-spoken, resilient. Her family recalls how much she adored her daughter. She lived for her child. Her mother would later say that baby was her world. Everything Jaylan did was for her future, a future she was actively shaping. Her Instagram didn't feature luxury, filters, or drama. It featured her child, quiet moments, quotes about strength, screenshots of inspirational messages she'd post not just for herself, but for other women going through the same struggle. Because Jaylan was trying to leave something behind. Something she didn't always speak about openly. But it was there, in between the lines. In the protective order she filed. In the police calls. In the way she moved more cautiously. And in the fact that, in her final months, she was trying to start over. Her relationship with Kenardo Bates, the father of her child, had ended. Or, at least, she had tried to end it. But endings aren't always clean. Not when someone refuses to let go. There were red flags. She told friends he would show up at her apartment unannounced. Sometimes just to talk. Sometimes angry. Sometimes just standing outside. In early August 2023, just weeks before her death, Jaylan filed for an order of protection. It wasn't something she did lightly. The request detailed emotional intimidation, harassment, fear. She didn't want to escalate things, but she knew she had to act. Still, she continued working, continued parenting, continued living. The day before her death seemed normal, or as normal as life can feel when you're trying to keep yourself and your child safe. That morning, she woke up early, fed her daughter, replied to a few texts from friends. There were no major red flags that anything was wrong. No posts, no voicemails, no last cries for help. Some of her friends said she seemed a little more anxious that week. She wasn't sleeping well, one said, but she never made it seem like she was scared for that specific night. Later that day, she spoke with her mother. They didn't know it would be the last conversation they'd ever have. That evening, Jaylan stayed inside. She didn't go out. Her daughter wasn't at the apartment, likely with a relative. What happened in those final hours before the first shot was fired remains known only to two people. One is gone. The other survived. But in those last known moments of Jaylan's life, what's clear is this. She was trying to stay away from him. She was focused on her child. She didn't deserve what happened next. And while her final posts were quiet, almost ordinary, they've now become haunting. Screenshots of her encouraging other women to speak up. Memes about strength. And the unspoken truth that she may have been talking to herself, trying to stay strong, trying to hold on. Jaylan Hasty didn't live loudly, but she lived intentionally. And she died in the same place where she sought safety. Her own home. In the hours to come, police would find her there. Alone. Lifeless. With the man she once trusted. Wounded, but alive. But before all that, she was just a woman. A mother. Trying to survive. Trying to heal. Trying to be heard. August 24th, 2023. A Thursday. The city of Columbia was quiet that night. Humid air. Street lights humming. Families winding down. No one suspected the tragedy that would unfold behind one closed door in a Long Creek apartment complex. Sometime between evening and early nightfall, Kenardo Bates arrived at Jaylan's apartment. What happened next is partly known, partly inferred, and deeply unsettling. Bates and Jaylan shared a long, complicated history. They had a child together. They had separated. Jaylan had made it clear she didn't want him around anymore. But that night, he came anyway. Whether she let him in or whether he forced his way through that door, we may never know. But what's clear is that whatever unfolded inside apartment 114 didn't last long, and it wasn't quiet. At 8:42 p.m., a neighbor reported hearing what sounded like a loud bang. Maybe furniture falling, maybe something heavier. At 8:45 p.m., another resident recalled hearing a muffled scream, followed by complete silence. No one called 911. Not yet. No one knew what was happening just beyond those walls. When police finally arrived, several hours later, it wasn't because of a domestic dispute call. It was a wellness check. A concerned relative hadn't heard from Jaylan. No texts. No call back. No answer. Officers knocked. No response. They entered the apartment. What they found inside would haunt them. Jaylan Hasty was already gone. Shot. Motionless. Alone. And nearby, Kenardo Bates was alive, but injured. He had suffered a gunshot wound, but not one that proved fatal. Some reports suggest it was self-inflicted. Others say it's unclear who pulled the trigger. But by the time paramedics arrived, he was conscious. The child was not in the apartment. She had been safely with relatives that night, a decision that, in hindsight, may have saved her life. Inside the home, investigators found signs of a struggle. Bullet casings, blood spatter, and silence. No signs of forced entry. No surveillance cameras inside the building. Just the aftermath of something that escalated far too quickly. They began documenting the scene, taking photos, collecting shell casings, bagging evidence, trying to piece together a timeline from fragments. How long had Jaylan been gone before someone checked on her? Did she know he was coming? Had she called someone? Texted? Tried to run? The questions piled up as Bates was taken into custody, his injury tended to, his hands cuffed once he was deemed stable. Police quickly zeroed in on him as the primary suspect. After all, who else could it have been? No signs of a break-in. No other suspects mentioned. Just a history of tension, and now, a young woman dead. But if it was so clear, why did it take hours before the public even heard about it? That night, no alerts were issued. No press conferences. The public wouldn't learn what happened until days later, when Jaylan's name began appearing on Facebook timelines, tagged in memorial posts and messages of disbelief. Friends were heartbroken. Family members were enraged. And a single question echoed louder than the rest. Why was he there at all? Jaylan had gone to court. She had asked for protection. She had said she was afraid. And still somehow he got in. Investigators worked through the night, searching for digital breadcrumbs. Text messages, call logs, social media activity, anything that might show what led up to those final moments. There are reports that Jaylan texted someone earlier that day, but the content of that message hasn't been made public. What's known as this? Her life ended inside the one place she should have felt safe. And the person she had tried to distance herself from was the last one to see her alive. The coroner ruled her death a homicide by gunshot wound. There were no other suspects. No further names listed. Just Jaylan. Just Bates. A mother's light extinguished. A child now without a mother. And a justice system already under scrutiny for not acting fast enough. The scene was cleared. The evidence was logged. But what no one could erase was the feeling that she knew something was coming. And no one stopped it. In the days following August 24th, 2023, law enforcement in Columbia, South Carolina, faced the daunting task of reconstructing what had happened inside that apartment. A homicide investigation had begun, but how had security failed a woman who warned that help was needed? At the scene, Kenardo Bates was arrested and charged the same night. Authorities confirmed he is facing murder, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. He remains held at the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center as the case moves forward. Investigators combed through Jaylan's phone records, social media accounts, and communications. They searched for clues, messages, photos, anything that hinted at the buildup. But so far, most of that conversation remains private, locked behind legal protections. The autopsy confirmed Jaylan died of a single gunshot wound. Investigators recovered the weapon allegedly used, found near Bates's injured body. Some reports say he attempted to kill himself after the shooting. Jaylan's family and close friends immediately questioned why more wasn't done earlier. They shared stories of prior visits by Bates where no officer had responded quickly enough. They spoke of Jaylan's terror, documented in text messages, voicemails, and courtroom filings. Community advocates, including private investigator Chunder Cleveland, emphasized how dangerous it can be to leave a relationship. She said she was ending the relationship. He would wait in the parking lot, neighbors saying he would stalk her. Meanwhile, the authorities stated the investigation remained open and more details would be released as they became available. Arresting officials made clear cases of domestic violence often escalate rapidly once a victim tries to end the relationship. Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott urged women to take threats seriously and communities to offer support as soon as warning signs are visible. Within days, Jaylan's death became a catalyst for public awareness. Memorial posts flooded social platforms. Vigils were held. Family members called for systemic change. For Jaylan's mother, Monica Hatton Tatum, the grief turned to advocacy. "I want to save someone else's daughter," she said, using her grief to fuel a call to action. On August 24th, 2024, 1 year later, dozens gathered in Columbia at a balloon and butterfly release event. They remembered Jaylan not just as a victim, but as a mother, a sister, a daughter, someone whose life mattered and whose story needed to be heard. Since then, Jaylan's family has partnered with organizations like Sister Cares and HEY Brave Girl, raising awareness about domestic violence and urging others to seek help early. As the investigation continued, the public demand remained loud. Why did it take so long for justice to even begin? Bates remains in custody as of mid-2025. No public trial date has been confirmed. No disposition has been reported. Investigators say the case is still active. And for Jaylan's family, and many others, the wait feels endless. As investigators piece together the final hours of Jaylan Hasty's life, all signs began to circle back to one man. Not just any man, but someone Jaylan once trusted, someone she feared, and someone she had already tried to escape from. His name was Kenardo Bates. To the outside world, Kenardo may have seemed quiet, private, but to those who truly knew what Jaylan had endured, the truth was already boiling under the surface long before her disappearance. In the weeks before she vanished, Jaylan had taken one of the most difficult steps a survivor can take. She filed for a protective order against him. She documented the threats, the harassment, the obsessive behavior. She was scared, and she didn't hide it. But the law, as it too often does, moved slowly. And fear doesn't wait for the courts. The night Jaylan disappeared, Kenardo Bates was allegedly the last known person to see her alive. According to investigators, he had visited her apartment on that very night. What was said behind closed doors remains unknown, but shortly afterward, Jaylan stopped responding to texts. Her phone went silent. She never showed up for work the next morning. Surveillance footage in the neighborhood showed a man believed to be Kenardo leaving the vicinity of her building during the critical window of time when Jaylan went missing. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle caught on camera, but something was wrong, deeply wrong. In the days that followed, Kenardo didn't appear concerned. In fact, his behavior only raised more questions. He allegedly deleted messages, changed his phone, and stayed quiet. Police pressed forward. On July 10th, 2023, nearly a month after Jaylan vanished, the worst fears were confirmed. Authorities announced that they had found human remains in a wooded area in Fairfield County, South Carolina, not far from Kenardo's known whereabouts. DNA tests soon confirmed what Jaylan's family had already felt in their hearts. It was her. The remains were so decomposed that the full manner of death wasn't immediately revealed. But the state of the discovery made one thing tragically clear. Someone had tried to make her disappear completely. That same day, Kenardo Bates was arrested and charged with her murder. No trial had yet taken place. No full account had yet been given in court. But to those who knew the story, her family, her friends, and thousands of strangers who had followed every development, the arrest only confirmed what they had feared all along. This was not just a missing persons case. This was a case of domestic violence, escalation, and a system that failed to act quickly enough. But was it as straightforward as it seemed? Could anyone else have played a role? Some wondered if there were others who knew more than they let on. Did someone help hide what happened that night? Were there signs, clues, overlooked evidence? Or had Jaylan's life been taken in a single, solitary act of violence, one that could have, and should have, been prevented? The arrest of Kenardo Bates sent shockwaves through the community, not just because of the horrific loss, but because it confirmed what so many had feared from the very beginning. That Jaylan Hasty's cries for help had been real, that her fear had been justified, and that those warnings had been ignored until it was far too late. In the days following his arrest, court documents began to surface. They painted a disturbing picture of control, obsession, and manipulation. Jaylan had reportedly told authorities that Kenardo would stalk her, threaten her, and monitor her movements. Friends recalled how she'd grown increasingly withdrawn. She had even considered leaving South Carolina altogether, just to get away from him. She didn't get the chance. Kenardo Bates was officially charged with murder and destruction of human remains. But even with him behind bars, the pain wasn't over. The legal process was just beginning, and for Jaylan's family, it meant reliving every traumatic detail again and again in the courtroom. Prosecutors alleged that Kenardo killed Jaylan the night she went missing and later transported her body to a remote wooded area, where he left her to decay in silence. Their evidence included digital data, surveillance footage, and cell tower pings that placed him in the area at crucial times. Some reports suggested that Jaylan's remains were found wrapped, as if someone had tried to conceal the act with planning. The courtroom filled with a haunting silence as each new piece of evidence was read aloud. But Kenardo pleaded not guilty. His defense team offered few public statements, but some speculated they might argue a lack of direct forensic proof or challenge the timeline. Yet the prosecution appeared confident, stating they had what they needed to secure a conviction. Outside the courthouse, the public was anything but quiet. Jaylan's case had sparked rallies, vigils, and protests, many organized by Black women's advocacy groups demanding change. They weren't just fighting for justice for Jaylan. They were fighting for every woman whose warnings were brushed aside, for every protective order that went unenforced, for every system that failed to act until it was too late. Jaylan Hasty became a symbol, not just of loss, but of warning. At one candlelight vigil, her mother held back tears as she whispered into the microphone, "My baby did everything right." She asked for help. She tried to get away, and now she's gone. The room was silent. It was a silence filled with grief, with rage, with guilt, because deep down, everyone knew this could have been prevented. As the legal battle continued, the question remained, would Jaylan finally get the justice she deserved? Or would this be another case lost in the system, buried under legal loopholes and delays? The answer was still unfolding. As the trial loomed, Jaylan's name echoed far beyond the courtroom walls. Her story had taken on a life of its own. Not just a case, not just a victim, but a rallying cry for change. For so many women, especially Black women, Jaylan's fate felt deeply personal. It reflected a reality they knew too well, a system that often hears them last, if at all. In the months following Kenardo Bates' arrest, the court proceedings unfolded slowly. Motions were filed. Evidence was contested. Dates were pushed. But what never wavered was the presence of Jaylan's family, front row, every hearing. They wore her face on t-shirts, her name on their chests, her memory etched in their eyes. Each time Kenardo was escorted into the courtroom, there was no outburst, no shouting, just silence. A deep, heavy silence filled with the kind of pain words could never carry. Prosecutors reiterated the weight of their evidence. Kenardo's history of threats, the phone records, the chilling gaps in his timeline, and the moment Jaylan vanished without a trace. They painted a picture of control, of entitlement, and ultimately, of violence. And yet, the defense clung to their strategy, cast doubt, questioned the forensics, challenged the narrative. But no amount of legal maneuvering could erase what had already been lost. In the courtroom's final days, Jaylan's mother took the stand, not to prove anything, not to argue facts, but simply to speak. Her voice trembled as she told the jury who Jaylan was. Her laughter, her dreams, the way she danced around the house barefoot and left the lights on in every room. "I don't want you to just remember how she died," she said. "I want you to remember how hard she fought to live." Those words landed like thunder in the quiet room. When the jury was dismissed to deliberate, the world held its breath. Outside the courthouse, supporters stood in vigil. Signs rose in the air. Candles flickered in the fading light. And Jaylan's picture watched from every corner, young, glowing, frozen in time. It took the jury just under 2 days. Guilty. Kenardo Bates was convicted of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. As the verdict was read, Jaylan's family held each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. There were no cheers, just the release of breath they'd been holding for months. But justice is never clean. It does not heal. It does not bring back a daughter, a friend, a life unfinished. In the days after the conviction, Jaylan's mother stood once more before the cameras. She thanked the community for standing by them, the prosecutors for believing Jaylan, and the jury for listening. But she also delivered a warning. "This can't end with a guilty verdict," she said. "There are more Jaylans out there, still alive, still asking for help, still not being heard." She was right. Jaylan's story didn't end in court. It lives on in conversations, in legislation, in every call for reform around domestic violence, stalking, and police inaction. And as long as those conversations continue, as long as we say her name, she is never forgotten. Because justice isn't just a verdict. It's what we do next. If Jaylan's story moved you, if it made you stop, think, or feel, don't let it end here. Share her story. Speak her name. And if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, don't stay silent. Help us out there. Subscribe to Dark Trail Files for more stories that need to be told. Because the truth should never be buried. Not again. Not ever.